Hello, fellow classmates. I'm Kevin Davis. This is our second discussion board. I'm going to be talking about Anglicanism. I chose this because George Whitefield I found him intriguing. I'm not an Anglican, but I do know that Anglicanism is pretty closely aligned to Roman Catholicism. I did go to a Roman Catholic service one time and I was bored out of my mind. So I figured that Anglicanism would itself also be pretty boring. But George Whitefield was actually different. So I'm going to focus on a couple of reasons why I believe Anglicanism was important, even though there are several more. I'd say number one, the initial, and when the colony first started, there weren't any other denominations here. And the priests who did come, I mean, people they were dropping like flies. I mean, they were dying all over the place. The priests among them. So these men were still extremely brave, coming over here to do a service to the people who were here, and also to help evangelize the Indian population. And the priests thought it was their duty. And also, I'm going to talk a little bit about John Wesley and George Whitefield. Most denominations were formed out of its founder's religious experience. The founder of the Church of England, however, was Henry VIII, who broke with the Roman Catholic Church when the Pope refused to annul his marriage to Catherine of Aragon. Henry meant merely to replace the Pope as the head of the English Church, not to remodel it along the lines approved by Protestant reformers. But under his successors, that's exactly what happened, although not to the extent desired by Puritans like the Presbyterians and Congregationalists. However, the Church of England continues to look exactly like or have a close resemblance to the Roman Catholic Church as it does down to the present. Anglicans understood being religious as more as a matter of doing rather than feeling, more as a matter of godly behavior and faithful ritual observance than a dramatic inward transformation. Anglicans mistrusted sudden, strong public expressions of religious emotions, the screaming, the crying, and trembling that overcame some people in evangelistical revivals. Such behaviors a lot of Anglicans disdained as unseemly and disorderly. Dr. Samuel Smith talks about this in his book, A Cautious Enthusiasm. In the 1570s, Richard Hakluyt, one of Queen Elizabeth's advisors and an Anglican clergyman, encouraged voyagers to bring riches, civility, and Christianity to the New World. Hakluyt never made a voyage himself, so he didn't know the suffering involved in trying to establish a colony that was weeks away from civilization as he knew it. The thinking of the church and those in power was that people needed to work. England had high unemployment, and the New World was a remedy to that. However, in the initial beginning of the settling of the country, including Anglican priests, many of them died. And by the time things were settled and assembled in the colony and people were living longer, there was a ruling class, a middling class, and a slave class. The church in Virginia was mostly the Church of England, or Anglican. Based in Virginia, Barbados, Jamaica, and the Leeward Islands, the Anglican Church enjoyed the advantage of being the established state-sponsored church as it had been in England since the 16th century. When John Wesley and George Whitefield came on the scene, their evangelicalism threatened the establishment. The Great Awakening cut across denominational lines and had a unifying effect. Wesley, an Anglican influenced by the Moravians, along with his brother John, and Whitefield could be called the founders of the Methodist denomination. John also had an influence in the Holiness and Pentecostal movements. Whitefield, although Anglican, didn't minister like an Anglican. He traveled and he was never given a stationary pulpit by the Anglican Church. He ministered how he chose, which upset the status quo because he did believe in an inward conversion. But he became one of the greatest ministers of his generation. He was one of the first ministers to freely minister to the slaves as well. In conclusion, according to Dr. Samuel Smith in a lecture titled Colonial Christianity, he remarks that had it not been for the church trying to evangelize the Indians, the urge to colonize the New World might not have happened or been stunted. This evangelistic effort from the English started with the Anglicans in Virginia colony.